Welcome back to the report. The issue of fighters returning from conflicts in the Middle East and how to deal with them once back on British soil remains a highly contentious issue, especially given Britain's blanket suspicion of all fighters and the tough measures at the government's disposal. Denmark has devised an alternative scheme which is attracting attention from these shores here. Abdul-Harun has more.
The issue of fighters returning to Britain from conflicts in the Middle East and how to deal with their return is a contentious political and practical issue. The UK's Chief Terrorism Inspector and Head of Counter-Terrorism Policing has warned that Brits going to Syria face questioning and possible arrest on their return. Where the UK is using a range of tools to confront returning fighters, including the threat of removing passports and revoking citizenship, Denmark intends to take a somewhat softer approach. CAGE, the independent advocacy organisation working to empower communities affected by the war on terror, described the Danish scheme's approach as along the right lines, and, rather than criminalising returning fighters, the programme treats any psychological trauma or physical injuries and helps find them work or restart studies. But even if the Danish programme doesn't seek to criminalise returning fighters, the fact remains that attention by the Danish state starts from the premise that returning fighters may pose a threat, and so casting some suspicion on them. CAGE maintain that there exists no empirical evidence from previous conflicts to suggest that any blowback would occur. So I asked them, given their past defence of British fighters travelling to Syria and helping persecuted Syrians against Bashar al-Assad, did this endorsing of the Danish model indicate a change in their stance towards fighters?
What CAGE is calling for is that these people have the possibility to be in some way rehabilitated or allowed to fit into society, but not through the government's PREVENT programme. The government's PREVENT programme emphasises that these people have gone there for theological and ideological reasons, and we feel there should be a community-led sort of response. We have to emphasise this. This does not mean that these people are criminal. We don't in any way advocate for the blanket criminalisation of these people. This is just a simple way to help these people to fit back into UK society.
And so the question remains of how to deal with returning fighters. Some have even sought to differentiate between fighters fighting for the Islamic State and fighters fighting for other rebel groups as a start. The conflict in Syria is still in progress, but it may come to an end pretty soon, and Western Europe, North America and other parts of the world will be faced with dozens, if not hundreds, of returning fighters going home. Could the softer approach propagated by the Danes be more effective than that of the UK's in dealing with returning fighters? Abdul-Harun, The Report, Islam Channel.
Well, joining me in the studio to discuss this issue is Dr. Omer El-Hamdoon, President of the Muslim Association of Britain, and on Skype we're joined by Dr. Julian Richards, co-director of the Centre for Security and Intelligence Studies at Buckingham University. Welcome to you both. Can I start with you, Dr. Richards? I mean, basically the Danish programme seems to put its emphasis on reintegration of these people, whereas Britain's approach is one of rejection and criminalisation even. I mean, do you think reintegration is a better approach?
I personally think reintegration does need to be part of the approach, certainly. And actually, I'm not at all supportive of some of the more draconian measures that have been suggested by the likes of Boris Johnson and others recently. However, I think we face a slightly different situation than Denmark does. Britain is a different sort of society from Denmark. It has different issues about community cohesion and so on. So we can't necessarily say that what works there will definitely work here. We do have a serious issue about fighters going to fight for Islamic State, and we have to take that very, very seriously.
But what should happen when they actually turn up at the airport on their way back? Should they be arrested? Should they be questioned? Should they just be ignored?
I certainly shouldn't be ignored. I mean, I tend to follow the line of the Dominic Grieve, the way that he's laid things out recently, that some of these people need to be assessed. And some of them could actually be useful for us in terms of offering an alternative narrative to others who may be thinking of going out to fight in the conflict, or indeed, let's be frank, giving some intelligence about what's going on out there and who the key personalities are. So I don't think we should just ignore them. I think we should assess what sort of situation each individual is in, how they feel about the situation, what they plan to do when they come back.
And would the assessment that you want to be done by the police or by, you know, social workers or by local community leaders? Who's going to do this assessing?
Well, I mean, if we follow the prevent line, there's actually a range of local authority stakeholders who should be involved in that sort of assessment. It's not, the police are part of that, certainly, because security is part of the question that we're trying to address here. But they're not the only part of it, and nor should they necessarily lead it. There are other local authorities, bodies that should be involved as well.
Thank you. Well, Dr. Omer El-Hamdoon, I mean, what's your view? Do you think the Danish approach sounds reasonable?
I think, first of all, we have to say that the threat of terrorism or extremism is a real one. So we have to take it seriously. Every person that's been to Syria obviously has to be assessed, I think. But we have to also understand that different people have gone there for different reasons. A lot of people have gone wanting to help people. So they've gone from that humanitarian perspective. And even people that have gone for other reasons to fight, they're not really, you know, let's say terrorists in their nature, because if they were terrorists, they would have done terrorist acts in the countries that they have come from. So these are people who have gone in their intention to help. So we have to treat them, at the very least, give them a benefit of the doubt. We shouldn't be automatically assuming that they're guilty. There shouldn't be automatic arrests. So the Danish model does seem to be a softer approach, and obviously dealing with people, you know, in a more comfortable way may actually get more out of them and may be better for them coming back into society.
And what do you think of the PREVENT program, which Dr. Julian Richards mentioned? I mean, where you have a range of people doing an assessment. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, a range of people doing assessment does make sense, because obviously you're looking at them from a number of perspectives. But I think the PREVENT program, as such, is already starting off on a bad foot, because it's looking at people with almost, you know, looking at them with a suspicious eye. So we have to treat people, you know, first of all, with our sort of British value, or as a worldwide value, that they are innocent until proven guilty, not like Boris Johnson has said that they need to prove their innocence. So that's number one. Secondly, that they have to be, the whole community, as a whole society, needs to work together, and we shouldn't be using knee-jerk reactions, which can very much draconian.
What happens if the people sort of say, we don't want to be interviewed by the police? Are they allowed to reject an interview? Or so basically they would then be arrested, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think obviously that will show their kind of interaction. If they are made to understand that, you know, and if they should really understand that this is in the interests of British security, and every country has the right to ensure its security. If they don't want to be interviewed, or they don't want to be helpful, then obviously there are other measures that can be taken into case. But being arrested doesn't mean that you're a criminal. You know, people are arrested for questioning, arrested for, you know, getting information. So that doesn't automatically say that they're guilty.
Now, the figure is often mentioned of 500, allegedly 500 people from this country have gone to Syria. Do we have any idea how many of those 500 have actually come back already?
I don't have any information on that, I'm afraid.
Because that would be a good model, you know,
Yes.
if we knew that a certain number come
Yes.
back and we could see what they've done since they come back, it might alleviate some of the fears that
Obviously,
people
yes.
have, that automatically they're always going to be terrorists.
Without doubt. I mean, and the other perspective which we also should take is that any fighter, even, you know, a soldier who goes in a you know, under an army guise, going into war, seeing people being killed, is traumatic. And we've seen soldiers who have come back with, you know, post-traumatic syndrome. So any person that is that kind, and even if people haven't gone to fight, to see, you know, to see carnage, to see people be killed, does mean that somebody does need rehabilitation back into society, because there might be some sort of aspect of anxiety, stress that needs to be dealt with. Obviously, in that scenario, the police are not the best people to be. We're looking at more people who can maybe look at them from a social perspective, even maybe doctors, psychologists. All those people play a part in trying to get those people who have come from difficult scenarios.
And do you have any sense that the government is softening its line? I mean, just a few days ago, David Cameron made all this very strong stuff about taking passports away and refusing to let them come back to the country. Since then, there's been a bit of a debate. Do you think the government is now softening a little bit?
I don't see it softening. In fact, I mean, in one way, these sort of there was that threat of those coming into play, and obviously the reversal is also quite scary in a way. You know, that to stop people from travelling You know, you can automatically have someone who's going on what we can say a legitimate travel, but if he's suspected and has his passport removed, or indeed he misses his travel, then those kind of powers can actually prove quite unhelpful and might have a severe backlash on the whole approach to tackling terrorism.
And isn't there a bit of a contradiction in the sense that the British government is helping the so-called moderate opposition in Syria? So maybe there's some of these 500 who are going also part of the moderate opposition. So in that sense, they're allies of the government, not enemies.
Yes, I mean, I think that's part of the bigger sort of confused foreign policy that we have here in Britain. Unfortunately, it's there with Syria when we were supporting the rebels. We supported the rebels, or if we can call them rebels, in Libya. So where does the British government stand in all of this? And that kind of confused message in the beginning allowed lots of people to go to Syria because they wanted to help. Bashar was seen as the enemy. Now it's reversed. So without doubt, for those British Muslim youth who are going there, or indeed any person that's going there, has that confused kind of image coming up to him.
Well, thank you on that note, Dr. El-Hamdoon. We've got to end the programme. Thank you, Dr. Julian Richards, as well. That is all we have time for tonight. So thank you all at home for watching. Remember, you can keep up with our Twitter conversation on all of tonight's stories by tweeting @IslamChannel using the hashtag #TheReport. We're back tomorrow evening at the same time. For now, we'll leave you with some footage of the German ambassador to India taking the rice bucket challenge. A reference, of course, to the popular ice bucket challenge, where the aim here is to distribute as many buckets of rice as possible to those who are homeless and in need of food in India. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, good night.